Abu Simbel is two massive rock-cut temples in the village of Abu Simbel, Aswan Governorate, Upper Egypt, near the border with Sudan. They are situated on the western bank of Lake Nasser, about 230 kilometers southwest of Aswan by road. The complex is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site known as the Nubian Monuments, which run from Abu Simbel downriver to Philae. The twin temples were originally carved out of the mountainside in the 13th century BC, during the 19th dynasty reign of the pharaoh Ramses II. They serve as a lasting monument to the king Ramses II. His wife Nefertari and children can be seen in smaller figures by his feet, considered to be of lesser importance and were not given the same position of scale. This commemorates his victory at the Battle of Kadesh. Their huge external rock relief figures have become iconic. The complex was relocated in its entirety in 1968 under the supervision of a Polish archaeologist, Kazimierz Michalowski, from the Polish Center of Mediterranean Archaeology University of Warsaw, on an artificial hill made from a domed structure, high above the Aswan High Dam Reservoir. The relocation of the temples was necessary or they would have been submerged during the creation of Lake Nasser, the massive artificial water reservoir formed after the building of the Aswan High Dam on the River Nile. The project was carried out as part of the UNESCO Nubian Salvage Campaign. History. Construction. During his reign, Ramses II embarked on an extensive building program throughout Egypt and Nubia, which Egypt controlled. Nubia was very important to the Egyptians because it was a source of gold and many other precious trade goods. He, therefore, built several grand temples there in order to impress upon the Nubians Egypt's might and Egyptianize the people of Nubia. The most prominent temples are the rock-cut temples near the modern village of Abu Simbel, at the Second Nile Cataract, the border between Lower Nubia and Upper Nubia. There are two temples, the Great Temple, dedicated to Ramses II himself, and the Small Temple, dedicated to his chief wife Queen Nefertari. Construction of the temple complex started in approximately 1264 BC and lasted for about 20 years, until 1244 BC. It was known as the Temple of Ramses, beloved by Amun. Rediscovery. With the passage of time, the temples fell into disuse and eventually became covered by sand. By the 6th century BC, the sand already covered the statues of the main temple up to their knees. The temple was forgotten until 1813, when Swiss Orientalist Johann Ludwig Burckhardt found the top frieze of the main temple. Burckhardt talked about his discovery with Italian explorer Giovanni Belzoni, who traveled to the site, but was unable to dig out an entry to the temple. Belzoni returned in 1817, this time succeeding in his attempt to enter the complex. A detailed early description of the temples, together with contemporaneous line drawings, can be found in Edward William Lane's description of Egypt. Relocation. In 1959, an international donations campaign to save the monuments of Nubia began. The southernmost relics of this ancient human civilization were under threat from the rising waters of the Nile that were about to result from the construction of the Aswan High Dam. One scheme to save the temples was based on an idea by William McQuitty to build a clear freshwater dam around the temples, with the water inside kept at the same height as the Nile. There were to be underwater viewing chambers. In 1962 the idea was made into a proposal by architects Jane Drew and Maxwell Fry and civil engineer Ove Arup. They considered that raising the temples ignored the effect of erosion of the sandstone by desert winds. However, the proposal, though acknowledged to be extremely elegant, was rejected. The salvage of the Abu Simbel temples began in 1964 by a multinational team of archaeologists, engineers and skilled heavy equipment operators working together under the UNESCO banner. It cost some $40 million at the time. Between 1964 and 1968, the entire site was carefully cut into large blocks, dismantled, lifted and reassembled in a new location 65 meters higher and 200 meters back from the river, in one of the greatest challenges of archaeological engineering in history. Some structures were even saved from under the waters of Lake Nasser. Today, a few hundred tourists visit the temples daily. Many visitors also arrive by plane at an airfield that was specially constructed for the temple complex, or by road from Aswan, the nearest city. The complex consists of two temples. The larger one is dedicated to Ra-Harakti, Ptah, and Amun, Egypt's three state deities of the time, and features four large statues of Ramses II in the facade. The smaller temple is dedicated to the goddess Hathor, personified by Nefertari, Ramses' most beloved of his many wives. The temple is now open to the public. Great Temple. The Great Temple at Abu Simbel, which took about 20 years to build, was completed around year 24 of the reign of Ramses the Great. It was dedicated to the gods Amun, Ra-Horakhti, and Ptah, as well as to the deified Ramses himself. It is generally considered the grandest and most beautiful of the temples commissioned during the reign of Ramses II, and one of the most beautiful in Egypt. Entrance. The single entrance is flanked by 4 colossal, 20-meter statues, each representing Ramses II seated on a throne and wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. The statue to the immediate left of the entrance was damaged in an earthquake, causing the head and torso to fall away. These fallen pieces were not restored to the statue during the relocation but placed at the statue's feet in the positions originally found. Next to Ramses's legs are a number of other, smaller statues, none higher than the knees of the pharaoh, depicting his chief wife, Nefertari-Meretmet, his queen mother Mutui, his first 2 sons, Amun-Her-Kapeshf and Ramses B, and his first 6 daughters, Pintaneth, Baketmet, Nefertari, Meritamen, Nebetui, and Iset-Nofret. The facade behind the colossi is 33 meters high and 38 meters wide. It carries a frieze depicting 22 baboons worshipping the rising sun with upraised arms and a stele recording the marriage of Ramses to a daughter of King Hattusili III, which sealed the peace between Egypt and the Hittites. The entrance doorway itself is surmounted by bas-relief images of the king worshipping the falcon-headed Ra-Horakhti, whose statue stands in a large niche. Ra holds the hieroglyph user in a feather in his right hand, with Mot in his left. This is a cryptogram for Ramses II's throne name, user Mot-Re. Interior. The inner part of the temple has the same triangular layout that most ancient Egyptian temples follow, with rooms decreasing in size from the entrance to the sanctuary. The temple is complex in structure and quite unusual because of its many side chambers. The hypostyle hall is 18 meters long and 16.7 meters wide and is supported by 8 huge Osirid pillars depicting the deified Ramses linked to the god Osiris, the god of fertility, agriculture, the afterlife, the dead, resurrection, life and vegetation, to indicate the everlasting nature of the pharaoh. The colossal statues along the left-hand wall bear the white crown of Upper Egypt, while those on the opposite side are wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. The bas-reliefs on the walls of the pronaos depict battle scenes in the military campaigns that Ramses waged. Much of the sculpture is given to the Battle of Kadesh, on the Orontes River in present-day Syria, in which the Egyptian king fought against the Hittites. The most famous relief shows the king on his chariot shooting arrows against his fleeing enemies, who are being taken prisoner. Other scenes show Egyptian victories in Libya and Nubia. From the hypostyle hall, one enters the second pillared hall, which has 4 pillars decorated with beautiful scenes of offerings to the gods. There are depictions of Ramses and Nefertari with the sacred boats of Amun and Ra-Horakhti. This hall gives access to a transverse vestibule, in the middle of which is the entrance to the sanctuary. Here, on a black wall, are rock-cut sculptures of 4 seated figures, Ra-Horakhti, the deified king Ramses, and the gods Amun, Ra and Ptah. Ra-Horakhti, Amun, Ra and Ptah were the main divinities in that period and their cult centers were at Heliopolis, Thebes and Memphis respectively. Solar alignment. It is believed that the axis of the temple was positioned by the ancient Egyptian architects in such a way that on October 22 and February 22, the rays of the sun would penetrate the sanctuary and illuminate the sculptures on the back wall, except for the statue of Ptah, a god connected with the realm of the dead, who always remained in the dark. People gather at Abu Simbel on these days to witness this. These dates are allegedly the king's birthday and coronation day, respectively. There is no direct evidence to support this. It is logical to assume, however, that these dates had some relation to a significant event. In fact, according to calculations made on the basis of the heliacal rising of the star Sirius and inscriptions found by archaeologists, this date must have been October 22. This image of the king was enhanced and revitalized by the energy of the solar star, and the deified Ramses the Great could take his place next to Amun, Ra and Ra-Horakhti. Because of the accumulated drift of the Tropic of Cancer due to Earth's axial precession over the past 3 millennia, the event's date must have been different when the temple was built. This is compounded by the fact that the temple was relocated from its original setting, so the current alignment may not be as precise as the original one. Greek Graffito. A well-known graffito inscribed in Greek on the left leg of the colossal seated statue of Ramses II, on the south side of the entrance to the temple records that when King Psammetichus came to Elephantine, this was written by those who sailed with Psammetichus the son of Theocles, and they came beyond Kirkis as far as the river Permits. Those who spoke foreign tongues were led by Ptahsemto, the Egyptians by Amasis. Kirkis was located near the fifth cataract of the Nile, which stood well within the Kushite kingdom. Small Temple. The Temple of Hathor in Nefertari, also known as the Small Temple, was built about 100 meters northeast of the Temple of Ramses II and was dedicated to the goddess Hathor and Ramses II's chief consort, Nefertari. This was in fact the second time in ancient Egyptian history that a temple was dedicated to a queen. The first time, Akhenaten dedicated a temple to his great royal wife, Nefertiti. The rock-cut facade is decorated with two groups of colossi that are separated by the large gateway. The statues, slightly more than 10 meters high, are of the king and his queen. On either side of the portal are two statues of the king, wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt and the double crown. These are flanked by statues of the queen. Remarkably, this is one of very few instances in Egyptian art where the statues of the king and his consort have equal size. Traditionally, the statues of the queen stood next to those of the pharaoh, but were never taller than his knees. Ramses went to Abu Simbel with his wife in the 24th year of his reign. As the great temple of the king, there are small statues of princes and princesses next to their parents. In this case they are positioned symmetrically. On the south side are, from left to right, Princes Muryatam and Murair, Princesses Meritamen and Henatawi, and Princes Rarwenamef and Amun-her-Kapes, while on the north side the same figures are in reverse order. The plan of the small temple is a simplified version of that of the great temple. As in the larger temple dedicated to the king, the hypostyle hall in the smaller temple is supported by 6 pillars. In this case, however, they are not Osiris pillars depicting the king, but are decorated with scenes with the queen playing the sistrum, together with the gods Horus, Khnum, Khonsu, and Thoth, and the goddesses Hathor, Isis, Mut, Mut of Ashur, Satis and Taweret. In one scene Ramses is presenting flowers or burning incense. The capitals of the pillars bear the face of the goddess Hathor. This type of column is known as Hathoric. The bas-reliefs in the pillared hall illustrate the deification of the king, the destruction of his enemies in the north and south, and the queen making offerings to the goddesses Hathor and Mut. The hypostyle hall is followed by a vestibule, access to which is given by 3 large doors. On the south and the north walls of this chamber there are 2 graceful and poetic bas-reliefs of the king and his consort presenting papyrus plants to Hathor, who is depicted as a cow on a boat sailing in a thicket of papyri. On the west wall, Ramses II and Nefertari are depicted making offerings to the god Horus and the divinities of the cataracts, Satis, Anubis, and Khnum. The rock-cut sanctuary and the 2 side chambers are connected to the transverse vestibule and are aligned with the axis of the temple. The bas-reliefs on the side walls of the small sanctuary represent scenes of offerings to various gods made either by the pharaoh or the queen. On the back wall, which lies to the west along the axis of the temple, there is a niche in which Hathor, as a divine cow, seems to be coming out of the mountain. The goddess is depicted as the mistress of the temple dedicated to her and to Queen Nefertari, who is intimately linked to the goddess.